We're good.
Hi, Miss Megan. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Awesome.
I think you need to get Charlie a mini gavel. This says Pro 10 on it.
Just turn the big screen off.
Or maybe it's this microphone.
We just turned that off and it's okay.
Was it this microphone that would do it?
No, you can't have
Sometimes that big screen does that.
I thought maybe there's aliens over there.
Okay, you ready?
Ready?
All right, call the meeting to order. For those who would, please stand for an opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Cameron, if you would.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and thank you for all you do for us. And Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for this time to get together and discuss the direction of the city. Most importantly, Lord, we just thank you for the favor that's been bestowed upon this city that we see every day, and the changes that we see every day, and the movement that we see every day. And God, let us never take for granted that wisdom comes from you, and I pray that you would just lead and guide and direct us as we move forward and discuss the future of this city. Guide and lead us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all. Welcome to our 2018 budget workshop. Going to turn it over to Mr. David Cameron.
Right on. Do I have to use this? Or I can just turn it on maybe? Can you hear me without it? The question I'm going to be is, it'll be picked up on the recording as well, I believe.
Microphone right there.
Okay, very good. So, tonight is our budget hearing to discuss the 2000, kind of twofold, is the 17. I need the power. The 17 and 18 budget. One thing about it is, by last year, and we would have picked up in the auditor last year, you have to do a 2017 revise. So we've already revised the budget in 2017, but any time that you typically, historically, in a fiscal budget, you usually go through that twice a year. And so this year, what we'll do is in the budget process, we will approve the revised 2017 again, even though we've already voted on it once, because in the future what we'll do is there'll be about twice a year, about June, we'll see, hey, what happened, what things we've done, we may have adjusted from the budget. What that gives us is flexibility in the budget, that we don't have to get everything perfect tonight, because what if all of a sudden we needed to do something different, we make that decision, when we come back and revise it, anything that's happened after June, we'll come back and revise it again. That's very standard operating protocol in business and in government, but we cannot have a budget that does not balance. So as you recall, we had to approve or correct the 2015 and 16 budgets by revising them in this year to do that. This year we will not do that, because when we go for the approval of the budget for 18, we'll also be approving the 2017 revised. So we'll be doing two things at one time. So tonight we're going to go over a little bit of, obviously we're going to go through 17 where we're projecting, which is very exciting, because if you recall, those that were here in last year's meeting, it was a pretty gloom, pretty bleak outlook for where we were sitting with the financials. So I'm pleased to announce this year I do not have the red laser pointer to point out all the red that is of a concern. There are some areas that we're continuing to work on that we need to look at, especially on the water wastewater side. And that's because I've just had the last 2 months and the chance to dig into it. So there are some areas that I think that we need to address moving forward. But I want to commend both Debbie and Jared on this budget, because a year ago there was a whole lot of work that went in just to get it ready. It was my first budget, and then all of a sudden you realize there's numbers that are, if you recall, stormwater streets were put together. So we've kind of got through all that, and as you can tell, we got an improved bond rating, was able to save money. So I believe we got the attention of the S&P, that we are in a much more stable position than we were 365 days ago. And so I'm really proud to present this budget as we move forward, and we'll kind of go through it. But I'm going to turn it over to Debbie. We're going to tag team it a little bit. And but first what we'll do is we're going to go through the PowerPoint, kind of talk about a little bit of 17, a whole lot about 18, and then we'll probably take a little bit of a break and then go into the actual financials. And if you have any questions regarding line items to ask us, we'll be more than happy to highlight those. But there's some areas that I want to highlight just so that you're aware, to be as fully transparent both in this room and with the community as well that's watching or will watch this. I think there's one thing it's been very telling, and I was talking to the mayor about this the other day. I think there's times that people look at what we're doing in the meetings and think we've already got, that there's not a lot of discussion. I think that one thing about it is in this budget, we're adding a PIO, and hopefully we'll start to get more of our information out to the community about what we're actually discussing before we ever get to a vote. And so it looks like sometimes on TV, there's just no discussion about what we're doing when we're actually having these work sessions. And when people watch the meeting, there's all this discussion's been done, the groundwork's been laid. So we're going to do a better job in 2018 about getting that message out. I'm looking forward to adding the PIO in the discussion. But right now, tonight, we're going to go over where we stand, revenues and expenditures, the final budget for the amendment. We're going to go through the budget overview and then the budget details. So I'm going to turn it over to Debbie at this stage to kind of talk about 2017, where we're at. But I think you'll be very pleased versus where we had, I think it was $13 we had to budget the I think we ended a whole lot better than that. So go ahead, Debbie.
Well, actually, this year, going through, we've had a lot of changes that happened during the year. And some of those happened with the franchise fees. They were unexpectedly higher than we thought they were going to be. The sales tax numbers also came in really strong. They came in higher than we were thinking they were going to come in. And then the permit fees over in the community development department came in a lot higher. So going through this discussion, we decided that we're probably going to be creating a reserve fund in the future. We still have to talk it through a little bit more for those permitting fees for future years. Expenditures, we had a lot of different expenditures, and I'm going to let Jared address some of these that had come up this year.
Sure. If you recall, early in the year, we went to outside legal services for the noise issue. Same with small cell wireless, which may be nearing an end. Legal services for the IRS audit, that was a one-time. IT outsourcing with Sean's departure, we relied on TSI more and more. TSI now Nexio. So we had a little additional expense there. Prosecuting attorney, which we're still continuing to pay every week or every 2 weeks for his duties over there in addition to Ron. Early in the year, in the transition of the finance department, we brought on Larry Brown, Maximus LLC, to help us with our financial situation. Vacation payouts, this is something we're kind of going to address in the employee handbook as well to try to lessen those a little bit. But we had a couple, 3 large vacation payouts this year with the departure of some key personnel. Garden Business Park, the whole project out there, which was recently completed. The Schiller Creek Lift Station, as you recall, I can't remember what month that was, but earlier this year. Oakwood and Hines project, you'll see a large impact in the 18 budget for this, but we do have some expenditures in the 17. We're able to, this was Heather, correct, on the financial clerk? Took Heather Green from part-time to full-time position, and we reestablished the UB supervisor position over in the utility billing. The final one there is FF&E, where we have just some general needs we took care of in some of our various buildings.
At one point to note, talking about the utility billing supervisor and then the financial clerk, if you recall, the auditors were saying we were shorthanded on staff on our financial side, so we were able to address some of the findings in the audit very quickly, so we appreciate your consideration to get those things shored up as well.
So the exciting part is the numbers. And so coming at the beginning of the year, we did an amendment halfway through the year. So this is the amended number on the far left-hand side of the screen, the 12/31/17 budget. We had budgeted $7,402,000, but we actually came in on the revenue side at $7,565,000. So that was an unexpected increase. So then over here, we had budgeted for the expenses on the operating side, $6,891,000, but we actually came in slightly lower. And then you see we also came in lower on the capital expense. So the combination of savings and increased revenues left us in a good position on the general fund at the end of this year. We're estimating approximately, the year's not over yet, so it's an approximate estimation. We'll have probably about a $200,000 surplus from what we budgeted at the end of the year. The enterprise fund also we went through. Our revenue was slightly higher, $7,424,000. The operating expenses came in a lot lower than originally budgeted. That's because with the transition, some of the priorities of projects were rearranged. Some things were put on hold. But it came in at $4,639,000. And then the capital expense was $1,989,000. So with all of that said, we're also ending under budget on that. You'll see over here on the Parks and Recreation, we also are estimating to come in over revenue, which is a good place to be, $3,024,000. The operating expenses came in a little slightly higher, but the capital expense was lower at $167,387. Over here on the street, stormwater, fire, tax, those are basically your capital funds. The revenue came in a lot shorter this year. Some of that we will address if you look through the 2018 budget. When we get to that, is when they split the water and the wastewater, some of the different funds, the income wasn't quite slid over in the right place, and David Cameron will talk to you a little bit more on that. But anyway, the revenue was lower, but the expenditures, we examined the budget and we kept them in check. So we did not go over, and we're still a balanced budget. So capital expense, $1,289,000.
Can we back up just a few slides to what we spent here? Yeah, that's going to do it to us again. Anyway, you've got the slides in front of you, but one thing I want to note is all these things were impeding progress to some event. We had the legal services for noise. I would tell you that is the best $21,000 we ever spent, because quite frankly, it had been an ongoing issue for over 2 years. So we're no longer dealing with those situations. The small cell wireless, we dealt with this in the recent meeting where we were ahead of the situation rather than letting it get to us at the meeting. So a lot of these things, the legal services for the IRS audit, like I said, a year ago it was a little bit more bleak of what we were talking about getting done. But the money that we spent for outsourcing TSI, I think that with the time, in recent weeks when you saw we lost our server, we were back up. I mean, typically that had probably taken 2 or 3 days historically. We were back up within a day. I mean, it wasn't ideal. But TSI was here, and they got that with 3 or 4 resources where we didn't have it before. And then the prosecuting attorney, it was nice when they were on, but Larry Brown came in, if you recall, in that transition, as we were moving into a more robust financial position, and as Debbie was coming on. I think this is all money very well spent and an investment for us to move forward with our mission, vision, and values. So is there any questions regarding, so the financials that we provided you, we give you a brief overview of kind of the snapshot of the summary, but looking at the revised 2017 financials in the spreadsheets, not into our PowerPoint, is there any questions regarding the revised 2017 that is an alarm or something that you weren't expecting to see, or some line item like, hey, that you would like to discuss? And we can go through those when we get to those sheets, but is there anything that just stands out that you would like to cover that does not make sense when you're reviewing the financials? So we'll go back over that, because there are some areas that we can explain because we've had to clean up. One thing about it is I'm glad we don't have the laser pointer, but at the same time there are some areas that we were like, okay, that wasn't right, and we corrected it. And for us, we just became, we call it turning onions into chocolate cake around here. So we find the things, we make it better. So here's the savings by being aggressively progressive, which goes along with our mission, which leads us into the 2018 budget. And how are we able to do the things that are presented in the 2018 budget? I kind of want to show you. And these are the things that's very hard. This is why I would like for us to get the PIO, is to get more of a message out of what we're doing. Obviously, we saved the $30,000 by eliminating the insurance broker. That was something that the city had done for 3 years. And one thing that we're asking a lot now amongst the staff is when someone asks a question, like I'm going to use Brenda for an example. We're sitting in a meeting one day and she says, why do we charge for the liquor license bond? If in staff there is not an answer to that question, it requires a process improvement or evaluation to do that. This is one of those $30,000 questions of why. And so instead of somebody saying, well, I'm not really sure, we're like, we need to know the answer because it's $30,000. If that was David Cameron's, personal business, I'm going to know why I'm writing a check to somebody for $30,000 and we don't know the answer, then we should be paying for it. So I commend the staff for doing that. We got a $29,000 rebate from United Healthcare for lower claims, so we were a healthy populace. The staff was getting healthier. We knew that. They had talked to us about that late last year, but there was no guarantees of doing this. And I will tell you, I think Lisa's going to talk about our insurance moving forward. But I think we're getting a much better deal on our insurance moving forward. I know we are. This was a game changer. When we refinanced the 2010, Series 2010 and 11 bonds, we reduced our debt payments by $187,000. And so basically, if you recall, there's this on another slide, we were about 401,000 that was in the general fund last year that's now being basically paid off. So not only did we reduce debt, saved $1 million, we're able to infuse $187,000 back into the general fund. 33,600 eliminated phone lines. This is at the Schuler Creek lift station. There was like a T5 or T1, whatever that thing. It was like $2,600 a month by just putting the Schuler Creek lift station online. And through Craig's wisdom, we give you Craig, the big attaboy, thank you. And I appreciate to see all the staff that are here that are working, especially on the public works side, to come and learn about what we're doing and get a better idea of what's going on. PD and everybody, it's just good to see you guys here. Jennifer for being here. I appreciate the staff being a part of what we're doing moving forward. We eliminated 1 FTE and 1 part-time position in the administration and repositioned staff members for savings and efficiencies. If you look at the 2018 budget, you will see the admin budget is down on the admin side by over $140,000, and that's including a PIO position. I'm going to explain where that money went here pretty soon. So, saved 1% on healthcare premiums, 7% on dental premiums, eliminated the cafeteria plan. The Teladoc changes are saving approximately $53.28. I got to tell on the city or as the organization, it's just something that Lisa found going through and just auditing the way we handle our benefits. Basically, the city was covering the $53.28 on the HSA plan, so basically it's double dipping. This is a government operated legislated program. If the city's paying for that Teladoc and they're paying through an HSA, it's double dipping. So the IRS, this is an IRS problem if the city was paying this for the employees. So one of the changes in this year is the employees are going to pay for the Teladoc like it is almost like a copay going to the doctor, because the city cannot legally be paying for this. So we corrected that in this budget. A lot of people use Teladoc, but at the same time, we cannot continue to pay for those things. So I think when we were working through the employee handbook, adding different benefits and things to the employees, such as holidays and things like that, it's trying to help offset anything that we change that might have a negative impact. We sold, obviously, thanks to Chief Compton, I think we beat fire trucks to death last year, but we needed to because we had a 1998 fire truck, or was it 91 fire truck that was on the debt. It's gone. So we sold the 2 older vehicles, about $45,000 on the reduction of our debt. And obviously the big one, the more challenging one, is we went out and we asked the voters for money to start paying for police vehicles and things that came off the general fund. But anytime you start paying for equipment, and it's not in the general fund, you're doing that through tax, those are always dangerous levels to be at, because that's telling you that you can't even buy the essential equipment unless you pass a tax. So I'm not going to tell you that we're out of the woods. I just can tell you that we're striving even better, and we're marketing a whole lot better to get through that. And one other thing that's not in here that I want to make sure we bring up. If you recall, last year we moved $200,000 out of the state highway fuel tax, out of the street department, and we moved it into the police department to pay for staffing. That is going to be this year's budget is the second year in a row we're going to do that. So I'm going to talk about things that we're going to have to continue to do to get that money back where, I mean, it's by statute it belongs there. We're going to be doing a lot less street projects because we're paying for staffing through a sales tax or a tax that's mostly designated to deal with streets. There's just one word in that statute, and it says patrolling. So you're going to see a number of our dollars is going to addressing our most valuable asset is our employee. So police and fire department changes, technology upgrades, this is our budget detail, the 2018 budget snapshot, debt obligations, and 2018 capital improvements you can read, but the tax rate structure and the city provided insurance in 2018. So first, our most valued asset, this budget increase for all city employees, this is for staff employees, not public safety. For all other than public safety employees, what they're getting is they're getting their 1.5 step, and they're getting the 1.5% COLA applied across the board, which will start on 7/1 through 12/31. It represents about $80,000 as budget expense in 2018 for both. Post, like annually after that, it's going to cost us about $160K. The approved salary increase, as you can see, that's not right. In 2017 there was only a 1% COLA. Yeah, so that's just the COLA was only 1%. The step was 1.5, so it was actually a 2.5 and $67,500 in expense for both in 2017. And then we had a 24% turnover rate. A lot of that has been some of the stuff that I basically have implemented and some of the changes that have been made. Not all of it is necessarily related to people just leaving and not wanting to leave because of money. Some of that is because we made some transitions in the organization to get different staff in here. And so, well, let's go back one. Okay. One thing that's going to be very helpful with the new software in place is we'll be able to track turnover rates a whole lot better. It was manually done, so it's very difficult. I think at one time you were told the turnover rate was 40%. We cannot verify or validate that number at all. But the objective in 2018, it was actually one of the things that was brought up whenever I was interviewing for the position, was how to address the delta in public safety. And so last year we were just trying to balance the budget, if you recall. But this year we basically refinanced bonds. We took money out of the street sales tax. We saved all the pages that I showed you before have basically been applied to the next two slides. Because as you can see, Republic sits right here in this schedule of payment. What's not even included in this is the delta that we still experience on the logger side. So this is just salaries and wages only. There is no way to make up that delta in 1 year. But what we did is we took all the savings, essentially every dime that was saved that you saw in the previous, and basically shifted it to public safety. So as you go through this, and it still allows the employees to get a raise, but the difference is there's going to be a discrepancy in public safety's wages and salaries and different benefits that we did. Loggers does not change for any employee at all throughout the city. But 4%, so effective January 1, this budget includes a 4% adjustment to the police staff on January 1. To all sworn police department staff, the expense for that in 2018 is $53,000. It also includes, if approved, another 1.5% for COLA, another 1.5% for merit, based upon a satisfactory evaluation. So in essence, a police officer in the Republic will be adjusted by by 7%, pending all those things aligning and working together. And for us, when you look at the salaries, back to the savings I talked about and all the admin budget, basically what we shifted, so when we shifted Connie's position to community development and shared it with Public Works, and then we have removed Brenda's part-time position. So a lot of those things have been done to help create and eliminate that, but we're still not there. So so in a lot of ways, this is as close as we're ever going to get, unless we come up with an alternative funding source. Yes.
Increase in wage is great. I want to know are we still be shortage of staff? Are we going to get more staff with that as well?
Only in PD had a staff member, and they were willing to give up their staff member to get this. They have zero capital. To get to this number, there is no capital in the PD budget. So it was all cut. So the cars are being purchased out of the capital improvement tax. So there's no more staffing. We cut the staffing out of that. Where the fire department said we need more staffing and got less money. So theirs is not even the same. So they're not adding more staff to this. I'll discuss those things because we do have things that are very difficult that nobody wants to discuss, but we're going to have to address a long-term solution to this other than where we're at. And I'm going to tell you right now, so you can hear it from my mouth, is I do believe we got a 1/8 that's still available, and I believe the public safety can help us go look for that. Springfield just passed level property tax. It's designated solely to public safety. Those are the places we're at, or otherwise this is never going to change. Because Nixon's getting ready to do a wage adjustment, but I'm extremely proud of the work we've done to get it to this point. There'll still be those that are not. At the same time I'm proud of where we're at to get to here, but it's going to take something bigger than this to address it long term. Because even this in a competitive area with loggers, the city, where we're losing out is on the logger side too, is we're not even competitive on the retirement alone for all city employees. So but this is step one. It's like I told some people, we're not going to fix it in 1 year. Great question, though. Because here's the other thing that's considered. When Brookline was consolidated into the part of the Republic area, geographically, we doubled the size of the city and the number of streets that the police have got to monitor, but just not the amount of people to do that. But I will tell you this, it was a more forward-thinking approach because eventually that's going to flip, and all of a sudden the revenue is going to start rolling into that, where you're going to be grateful that all that stuff is there. But there's going to be a lean season, and that's what we're working ourselves through. So this is just a part of the growth that's, I mean, we're not landlocked into the potential that we have. So this may look difficult, but I think we got to be realistic with the approach. And some, I mean, like I said, there's been some that it has been. There's been some that's just like, do more. And this is the best that we can do in this year. So, next slide. The firefighters. You'll see that the firefighter, on their positions, we're actually fairly competitive on the firefighter side. And what the staff was telling us, and I've heard this as well, is that they needed more employees. And if I asked Dwayne about what his needs are, he needs 6 more employees right now. And I could probably ask the same thing of Mike and get to the same thing and say, hey, we need more officers and more of the patrol division and things of that nature. But right now, it's just taking care of where the delta is, where we're competing with other places. So what we've added in this budget was 1 new firefighter position. There is consideration for a second. Here's the concern I've got is because we have about a $5,000 surplus for this budget to be balanced. If we don't sustain that revenue, that second firefighter is going to go to work for us. We're going to lay him off within 6 months because we didn't make the money to pay for us. So I want to see how our financials are doing. Again, we finished very different than what we set out to be last year. And I think we're positioned to do it again with sales tax generation. And also Heart of America will go online, and our franchise fees will go up. So this is more of a scarier area about adding people on if we can't do it. The other thing I want to see us do is eventually look into hiring a fire marshal to deal with all of our new building inspections and have somebody that's like we're added a new building inspector. I'd like to see that position added in 2019 to kind of partner with, yeah.
So, but the second firefighter for consideration at mid-year is not the fire marshal, right? That's
correct. It would not be a fire marshal.
Okay.
The fire marshal would come if we passed some sort of additional public safety tax or some
Okay.
sort of deal that would address how to pay for our police and fire. So the firefighters, January. Okay. So effective January 1, it's a 1% adjustment to firefighters, 1.5 adjustment to fire supervisors. And it's not in front of you, but there is one thing I credit Lisa and the staff for doing is they created a new scale for payment. So the police and fire have a new step and grade, or it's basically a little different. So it's not the same step and grade for the rest of the city. So why the discrepancy in fire supervisors is because there is a compression issue. Now how I got allowed to be that way, I'm not really sure. But what you have is you got $5,000 in between positions. So why would you want to be a captain? Take the responsibility for $5,000. Right? So that's a challenge that we've got to address as a compression issue on that side. It's not as bad if I recall on the PD side, is it, Chief? But on the fire, it got dropped. And so effective January 1, 18, 1.5 for firefighters, 1.5 for fire supervisors, and then they get the 1.5 COLA and the 1.5 step. So that basically comes out for some to be 4%, some about 4.5%. But like I said, every single dime we save from refinancing to the $140,000 is in these last two slides. There is no, I mean, if I knew where else to cut to get to that number to meet it, but that's a big step for us to be even there. So we're going to have to be aggressively progressive and ask some really tough questions of the community in 2018. And I have staff, and I've charged Mike and Dwayne both with putting together a plan that their staffs can get behind and get within the community and help sell why this is important. It will not go to build a new city hall. It will not be going to increase my pay. The fact, you know, say, hey, this guy's getting more money. What it's going to do is to establish how to get more money in the general fund and how to pay staff and more employees as we grow. So I would be expecting to see those things, and we'll having a PIO on board, and that's even adding a PIO to our staff. So I got to correct myself. So not all the savings went there. We actually used some of it to hire a PIO.
Is this the current pay, or is this what it will be?
This is the current.
This is
This
current.
is current, okay.
So you'll see that firefighters, maybe our engineers are making more than Joplin's engineers. Captains are a little bit down, but they're not, I mean, we're within, but PD is about two grand per. And if they make their adjustments January 1, then we're already, and they're doing 3% steps, plus another 1.5% COLA. We're on the PD side, if you flip that screen,
Yes, it is.
is this it? We're gonna be back at the bottom again this time of year from now.
The 4% at the beginning of the year will put our beginning officer just a hair over 34,000, and they could potentially have another 3% coming. But as David alludes to, surrounding communities might go to do the same or more, and we might still be at the bottom. You never know.
In fact, I'm actually told that NICSA gauges what we're doing as to how they're going to do theirs, and I bet we do the exact same thing. But that is a very aggressive approach for us in 1 year, to see a 7% and then a 4.5%. The balancing act to all of that is you've got other employees with the city. They're going to say, why is that? That's why we have to create this slide to demonstrate we're at the bottom of it. But we still got to evaluate all the other positions in all the other departments, street, water, sewer. All of them are going to be in the same. I suspect we're going to find very similar deltas as we go through it. Because the turnover in the wastewater side is extreme, is a lot. Next slide. Is that it?
This is basically what you talked about already.
Yeah, so basically we're leveraging our savings to deliver the 4% immediately January 1. So that's different. We're doing that January 1 right off the beginning is providing 4% to the start of the year, the one position. So any questions?
I would just say that in looking at those wage studies, it would be unrealistic to think that we can fix all of that right now. But I just appreciate the work that's gone into finding ways to save money. Because if we don't start, we're never gonna get there. So, you said that for some people, they might think that that's not enough, but it is a very aggressive approach to finding ways to make things better for those people, for all of our city employees, without putting us in an unsustainable position financially. So, I think it's great.
Well, and I think that's the thing is, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because the challenge is I'm chartered with, and the city's chartered with, we gotta present a balanced budget. So at any given time, I could very realistically have to cut a number of this to make sure we stay within the boundaries of the statute and the charter. So this is a very, I wanna say it's risky, but there is some risk and there is some boldness, which goes to our values, outlined in this plan. So, I mean, I'd love to have $50,000 sitting in a reserve rather than $5,000. That's why I'm a little bit jumpy about adding the other position on the fire side just yet. But I'll put it this way: 1/8 cent fire tax. What did you say, Dwayne? One position's 50,000. He needs 6.
45 to 50, roughly.
So basically, if you got 6 positions at $50,000 a piece, and an eighth generates 300,000, it's really no net gain. You've got 6 positions, but now you've got 6 more mouths to feed. That's going to be wanting that adjustment the next year. So you're going to be hoping that sales tax grows to make the wage adjustments there. So it's a little bit of a slope that we're going to have to navigate. But the one thing about it is, if you go back to the very first slide that we did for 2017, revenues up, expenses are down. That's got to be the message and the mantra that we continue to move through. Revenue goes up, expenses go down. So one thing that we're going to monitor a lot is going to be obviously the overtime to make sure that it is justified. And hey, you've got more people, manage your staffing better. Do it this way. Do the best you can to watch over the numbers. But I think staff has done an outstanding job to deliver that. But we were very fortunate that the franchise fees went up almost $150,000. And that's without Heart of America firing up their electrical system just yet. ROI hasn't fired up just yet. So we're going to start seeing some more franchise fees at 5% from just doing that. So that's going to be a big plus. Plus, we have not seen the true advantage or benefit of both Aldi's and Big Whiskeys at the same time. So, and plus all the other businesses. Plus, there's another, I would say this, the outlook for more revenue gets better and better every day. So, with that meaning, there's people that are very interested in coming into Republic to do business. The thing about it is, that doesn't help me when we're doing budgets and say, these are actual numbers, not forecasted. So, we have to, on what might happen. So I'm hoping to sit here a year from now and say, yeah, we're 500,000 to the good, even with doing all that. We gotta hustle it. We're gonna have to go out and make sure that we tell the community what the need is, not just a bunch of wants. But they need to see that slide where we're basically down on the bottom of our staffing. But we didn't even include the loggers. If I had all the details, and I appreciate the chiefs putting together all the information, they kind of, I mean, I asked for it back in July or August. I need the details of what the delta is. So we didn't include loggers in that discussion, but I brought it up to tell you that we're still probably 4 to 6% for every employee behind the curve on that. But it's gonna take time. It won't happen in 1 year. And what was it, Jared? What was the number? In the last 3 years, we've done
14% total.
14% total for
Probably would be for police.
okay. Any questions?
On the wage compression, that starts at captain and goes up then? Is that the
Engineer
increase?
and captain.
Engineer and
Yeah.
and captain, okay.
I mean, you look at just, what are the 3 levels?
Firefighter, engineer, captain.
Yeah, if you look at, there's only about a $5,000 separation for either position, so. I'm not exactly sure, how that happened, but it's up to us. That's one of the red flags I tell you that we noticed that somewhere that was not addressed. So there in itself, that's why you're gonna see different firefighters. And that's why I tell you, it's gonna be a very difficult message, but it's at the same time, I always have to say, being the messenger is not always fun. But at the same time is to say, hey, how come the captain's getting 1.5% and I'm getting 1? I'm the boots on the ground, but the problem is there's a compression of those 2 positions. And if I'm a captain, I'm like, I don't want the leadership responsibility for 5K, right? So that's one of the challenges that has to be addressed.
Back to David's question a minute ago, I think I answered it incorrectly. In 2016, all city employees citywide were given 4.5% total, a 3% COLA and a 1.5% step. This year, 17, we were given a 1.5% step, a 1% COLA. So there's 7% over the last 2 years. Looking forward to 18, if this should stand, all city employees over the last 3 years would be given 10%, which is substantial. PD would go up all the way up to 14%, and then the fire personnel would go to 11 or 11.5% over the last 3 years if this should stand.
One more. Oh, we changed it. I'm sorry, but we did add the, I missed it. Sorry. I'll leave this up to you guys. But there are some things that we are doing from a capital perspective, but as you'll see, there's not a lot of capital in your budget. If we're gonna say that employees are our #1 priority, this budget is everything that we say that we're talking about. We're not sitting here talking about buying a whole lot of stuff. In fact, this right here is critical to us. This is critical to us, but that's coming out of reserves. But we're going to generate enough reserves. If you read those financials on the front end, we actually generated enough savings this year to pay cash for that, actually out of the 2017 budget. So kind of a net, flush. So I commend the staff and the way we've done our business in the last year to actually generate the savings to pay for that. Plus, we've actually been very fortuitous on the, I don't want to call it fortuitous, we've had favor. That's what I tell you. So I'm glad to be able to sit here and say, versus a year ago, to have $13, to actually be into where we're at with 5,000, to be able to address, take one huge step towards addressing an issue that's been long-standing, which is on the public safety side. So you got the next one.
Sure. As David alluded to, on the first 3 items actually here, for the general fund portion, that's actually coming out of reserve. But 2018 really is going to be a year where we focus on technology. This is a long time coming. This is one of those things that just kept on getting punted and punted as funds didn't allow. But even all the way up when we had our IT director and now TSI/Nexio, these are things that they say really can no longer wait. We're currently operating on an antiquated 3-com telephone system. This is one thing that if we ran into a little tight situation, we could potentially spread out over the latter part of 18 and 19, maybe do a 45-45 split. Server storage enhancements, we run into multiple issues. TSI says they can get us where they need to be with about $40,000. We're going to return back to our computer replacement program. We did this and was really good about it. I would say close to about 8 years ago, but now we've no longer done it. We've got old machines out there. And I can say just from a personal standpoint, in Parks and Rec, we've had a couple of machines that we've had replaced recently, and productivity's just switched straight up because we were just sitting around waiting on stuff to open, waiting on things to do. So that funds, if we are able to sustain it every year, the $24,000 every year, we'll put a new computer in our employees' hands every 4 years. Originally, TSI was shooting for 3. They went and spec'd out a machine that they thought could last for 4 years. So that's good news if we can sustain that. Wireless network enhancements. This is a talk across the whole city. TSI indicated they could get what they needed to do for $25,000. Office 365. This solves a couple problems for us. Licensing. And then also with, as we get down here under records retention, which I know Brenda's excited about, that was $20,000. It actually might come in a little bit less than that. We got to figure out what levels we pay for which employees. Integrated financial software we talked about ad nauseum Tuesday night, but that is a shared expense as well. But the general fund portion of that, once again, is coming out of reserves. Tyler Content Manager, this was Brenda's records retention, $20,125. Archive Social is something new that you probably haven't seen before. But thanks to a committee that went through that, we went through three demonstrations, but we'll now have an effective way to archive all of our social media. So Brenda will go back and at a click be able to pull up anything archived that's ever happened on any of our social media platforms, which before we didn't even have a way to do that, which is very important as we move forward. Office 365 we already talked about. As you are aware, the one-stop shop's coming soon. We're able to put in $30,000 for the renovation of that building next door. PIO, David already talked about. Salary plus benefits, we think will be around $60,000 annually. We want to get this person started right away. If approved through the budget, we're going to go ahead and go out for advertisement for that position right away. And the whole point of that is to tell our story, 24/7, 365. Get a person in here that can do that all year round. And finally, the comprehensive plan. This was Garrett's initial estimate for the total package. Once again, that is spread out across all departments, but the total estimated cost for that is $267,250.
Hey Jared, back on that previous slide, the
Sure.
server storage enhancements. What's the scope of that? What does that 40,000 include? And have you looked at other options for not storing files locally?
Yeah, I can't immediately answer your question because I'm not of that mind, but I will share it with you, and I'll share with the entire council what they have suggested.
Okay.
Yeah. I know this was part of our problem last Thursday. They pointed to this is one thing I could correct. So.
Okay.
The PIO, is that funded among several sources since it's working for different areas of the city?
Essentially what we have is you're allowed an administrative transfer from each department. So based upon the usage, Jared, one thing that we corrected last year, the admin fee was just we have a formula now that we kind of look at how that's leveraged and who uses the position. So it's going to be a work in progress, who all that's built to and who's utilizing it the most. But yeah, it's built out across multiple departments. Because the objective is to have one centerpiece that houses the entire message of the city instead of having 4 or 5. So basically, they're going to be managing all the different networks, and people have access to it. The PIO will actually be in charge of all Facebook, all social media, but each department has admin folks like Jennifer, and the PD have people that go in there and update the data, but someone will be in charge of the whole message. Can I interject one more point? One question that's been brought up, and I'll address right now. The recycling center is not included in this budget. If I thought the annual operating cost per year, it first started off that we were getting that for free. And now what they're wanting to charge is $1,500 to $2,000 a month just to haul it off, plus us build it. So, and in our public capital improvement sales tax, we did not include building a recycling center. But at the same time, as we do not have a funding source necessarily to go and pay for continuing to haul it off. So that's something that we're going to have to continue to work on. But if that's something that you would like to see in the budget, it's going to have to be something that comes out of the reserve or somewhere where we cut and make that adjustment. So this is still open for discussion. This budget is not set in stone, so I just want to be very clear about what that is.
David, on the recycling center,
can you give us any estimate at all what it would cost the city for that to happen?
Well, it cost right about 40K to build it. Then it's gonna cost us probably 35 to 40,000 a year to operate it. So we had considerations was to charge a fee. Nixa charges a fee of $5 per resident, which I don't wanna put on someone's utility bill that doesn't wanna recycle. But I think the biggest thing we gotta do with the PIO is we could also offer, hey, contact your local waste service, because they offer you a green roll cart to your house for $5 a month that you can roll out to your car every other week to do recycling. Or we collect at the gate, charge $5 in town, $10 outside the city, something like that could be an opportunity to collect and pay it, to have a revenue source to pay for it. Because it does not generate revenue, it actually costs us, it's a service that we can provide. And I would question why it's been coming out of water, wastewater budget when it's a general fund operation that has nothing to do with the water and sewer use of the city. So that, there, and the other part was, I'm not necessarily sure that the way it was being funded or expensed or even maintained should have been at least addressed, or if not across all the city departments.
So that would be a general fund expense.
I believe it ought to be a general fund expense. Because I don't think you could take the parks tax. I don't think people voted for that to pay for recycling, and the street tax is the same way. And water and wastewater bills are not paid for recycling. So you'd have to create a funding mechanism where they could pay at the gate and have it staffed only those hours. But I could still see people saying, I don't want to pay for recycling. It's a service we're providing, but it still costs us to deal with it. So I think we need to do some sort of funding mechanism to do it.
So going into the 2018 budget, overall, the whole revenue, if you take all the funds combined, the revenue is $21,288,232. The expenditures for the whole entire, all the funds combined, $21,390,522. Some of them have withdrawals from capital reserves, but actually at the end of it, there's going to be $102,290 from cash reserve, not designated, just unrestricted cash reserves from some of the other funds, not the general fund. So going into the general fund, we have the revenue. Oops, going the wrong way. $7,551,214. Operating expense, $7,146,174. Capital expense, like we said, was very lean, $386,020. That, most of that is what Jared just discussed, IT needs for the city. We have a definition of what departments consist in the general fund below. And you'll see that our debt obligations in the general fund annually are $225,945. This is down from fiscal year 2017. In fiscal year 2017, those debt payments were $401,000. So it's $175 and $55 reduction. A lot of that was from the refunding of the 2010-2011 bonds. Included is a transfer from reserves of $223,150. But like David mentioned earlier, we might not have to do the full transfer out. If our cash position at the end of this year stays strong, then we might be able to pay for some of it just out of the cash, not the capital reserves. The enterprise funds, which consists of the water and wastewater. And I would just like to mention something for those of you who have the actual breakdown of the budget. You will see that we are going to hopefully be coming with the budget approval at the same time, an ordinance. Right now we have a combined water and wastewater fund, a combined utility. Going into this budget, it was really difficult, and David has mentioned there's some issues that we're examining, some things that we're looking at. But it's easier to resolve some of these things if we have separate funds. So if the water is a separate fund and the wastewater is a separate fund, there's an accounting. It's not shared revenue. You can see what the actual revenue is relative to the actual expense. So, but for the purpose of this discussion, the summary is rolled into one. So the revenue is $5,502,515. Operating expense is $4,967,415. $423. And the capital expense you will see is also very minimal, $279,840. So, but I wanted to bring up a good point. On the water and the wastewater fund, we have a very large debt load. You'll see the debt obligation annually on the water wastewater fund is $1,828,580. So when we pay that off, imagine what kind of capital improvements we can do for the water wastewater system.
But the revenue to that is about $60,000 a year.
How long before we retire?
3 years.
Yeah.
I know it by heart.
Counting it down.
Oh my gosh. But I want to back up to, we can get into it on the spreadsheets. You're doing fine.
Okay. So then the second slide here is the special revenue fund, which is the Parks and Recreation Fund. The revenue is $3,198,328. The operating expense is $3,025,369. And the capital expense is also very lean this year of $259,520. They have an annual debt obligation of $710,698 for the aquatic center and various other
Community centers.
centers.
And that's retired in.
2023 and 2024 respectively. I'm sorry, aquatic center first, community center, and other park projects second. But those also expire as our taxes potentially go away.
Sunset.
So we gotta get out ahead of those. We have 2 quarters, local quarters that expire in exactly the same time frame.
So this year's budget includes a transfer in from their capital reserve of $20,000 to apply to one of their capital projects. Then we have the combined special project funds of the streets, the stormwater, the fire tax, and the capital improvement sales tax. Those are basically your capital types taxes. The revenue of all 4 of those combined is $5,336,175. The operating expense is $2,114,039, and the capital expense is $3,212,237. The debt obligation on that is $504,656. Most of that is in the fire sales tax fund for the various vehicles and leases. So now everyone wants to know what the cash position is. It's a very good place to be. We're at the operating. As of 10/31/2017, our general fund, we have $1,646,452. We're projecting to end the year around approximately $1,800,000-ish, depending on where the expenses come in. The reserves are $891,247 in the general fund, and the restricted, which means we cannot touch them, they're designated for certain purposes, $793,796. So, as you all recall, our the City of Republic, we need to keep 17% cash, unrestricted cash reserves available for in our operating of our general fund expenses. And so I believe our calculation was approximately 24% at the end of the year if we end our cash position at the $1,800,000.
And where were we at a year ago?
We were
21 or 22 was the number.
Yeah.
So we actually are increasing that ratio even better.
So the water fund, we have $230,000 right now, $628 in unrestricted cash. Our reserves are $832,665. And let me just say, a reserve can be tapped into by a council action. They've been set aside for a particular purpose, but the council, through the budgeting process or through an ordinance resolution, can undesignate it or use it for another purpose. Restricted cash cannot be. It's like, that is the purpose. It cannot change. But the reserve still takes a council action through the budgeting process.
So, with that, some of the opportunities that are presenting themselves is like, as we did with Drury Lane, is the public-private partnerships. There are some opportunities that may be presenting themselves here pretty soon that have nothing to do with Drury Lane. There are other opportunities where we may be using those 2 funds to provide some level of infrastructure to help partner with creating more higher-end residential. and things of that nature to partner with developers to help try to kind of spread out under the same memorandum of understanding where we get our money back as it develops. So that's nice. That's a very nice reserve to have to be able to maneuver. And I do believe there's a market to sell those very quickly.
So the wastewater fund, the reason why that they're split equally is because the fund is still combined. So we split the unrestricted cash 50-50 between the two funds. And so the reserves that have been designated for the wastewater fund are $876,142, and the restricted is $1,251,640. A lot of that has to do with the SRF and various bonds and debt inside the wastewater fund. They're reserves that cannot be tapped until the payments are over. The street fund is $868,576. The reserve is $315,366, and the restricted is $118,803. Now, the stormwater has a really nice unrestricted balance. I mean, it's restricted for stormwater because that's the nature of the fund, but it's $1,274,933. But I would like to remind everybody that when they voted on the new capital improvement tax, this stormwater tax ended. So this will just be tapping into this balance to pay for our stormwater projects. It won't be growing anymore. It'll just be slowly going down through the years as we go through.
But to clarify, our tax included stormwater projects as well, so it does not leave us without any funding at all if we were to deplete that. We still have some money for stormwater that we included in the capital improvement tax.
Yeah.
But we just won't be building the reserve back up.
And then on the fire sales tax, the operating unrestricted cash balance right now is $199,775. And then the Parks and Rec fund is $388,415 of unrestricted. The reserves is $40,000, and the restricted is $20,000. We're going to be tapping into $20,000 of the reserved, not transferred. That's budgeted in the budget. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jared.
I'm moving on to debt. I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth the next two slides. But as you can see, our overall debt citywide continues to go down, down roughly $2.1 million from 2017 to 2018. The highlights of the debt, running off the page there. So in 2017, the things we paid off, the first two things were due immediately. These are refunding. We paid off the ladder truck, and we paid off the actual police building that was open to the public in 2003. We do have a little bit of a remainder here on police building infill, which was part of the 2011 bond series. We'll pay that off in 18, so that will be done. The other two things we paid off in 17 are the Oakwood intersection and the screw pump. We did take on some new debt in 2017, and we'll take on some additional debt in 18 as well. Obviously, Dwayne's big fire truck, which we were able to pay some money down. He'll have his first payment of that in 2018. You're going to go out and get another truck, which might have a first payment in 2018 as well. It seems like there was one other new debt. Oh, it was Heinz and Oakwood, which we've yet to start, but we will have our first payment in 18 as well.
The service trucks, probably, right?
Where are you at?
Water, wastewater service trucks.
Yeah, those payments started this year.
They're at the bottom. I think it's the sewer
right here.
service truck, yeah.
I did highlight in red just because it is important. Although our amount of debt in the general fund has gone down, we still do have these, well, it'll actually be 4 items in 18, but three items going on. But yeah, we still have this debt in the general fund, which is causing us a little pain. This is the Station 2 construction and Station 1 remodel. As you can see, our annual payments for those are around $190,000. These all total around $220,000 that we're still paying out of debt in the general fund. Ideally, in a perfect world, we would have paid for those through some other avenue, a sales tax or something, but as of right now, we're paying them out of general fund monies.
Hey, Jared, can you remind me, what is the Heinz and Oakwood debt?
That is the widening of Oakwood, and it actually extends on out to Heinz that we have yet to start. We're going to be starting that in May of 2018.
We financed our cost share. That was one thing that you had all done that you may not have known, that was not a cash reserve position. That was borrowing money to build a street to do it. And so,
And it's 2 years behind.
yeah, we got our first payment coming up before it'll even go out to bid. So, we're moving forward. I mean, it is moving, but that's a strange project there from we have available cash to make the payment. And it's collecting interest. We haven't even started construction yet.
But the good news is we have somebody working on it.
We're moving, and it's going going better.
But this is a very
Stay positive.
broad picture of our debt, but any questions on debt as a whole? Good news is going down, and that's even with bringing on Dwayne's truck and Heinz and Oakwood. The refunding helped us a lot there. The refunding, getting those payments out of the general fund was absolutely huge this year. That's how we're able to do what we've been able to do. So.
And the police building is essentially paid off.
Yeah.
If you recall, that was part of the debt that was on there. So we're able to capture all that into that refinance.
The police building infill that pays off in 2018, is that the basement of the police department? Yeah.
We couldn't quite get it all in the refund. We had a little bit left.
Our sewer funds look strapped with all of that annual payment. Is there an ideal spot? I know you're always gonna have some sort of debt, but
Well, we can get into it in those sheets, but this is only going to go. So I might as well go into it now. One of the things I learned in going into the wastewater budget in and of itself was, when we get into that spreadsheet, can we open that up just a second for me? I want to.
Which one?
What he's asking for is the debt service on the spreadsheet of the sewer. Sorry, I gotta close the side of this for a
we
second.
can wait. I mean,
What it is though, the way it was being accounted for, this council did not know. So when they were looking at the debt, we're actually showing the debt. So what they did, Brandon, is they didn't do it on a cash basis. They did it on a they did it on a depreciation or a accrual. So what was happening, and I see the top, this should be 14. Okay, 14, so go ahead and scroll on down. When you look at 14 and 15, give me to the debt slide, right here. So right here, it looks like all of a sudden, and those in the back probably can't see this, but this is $140,000 in 2014, this is $127,000. And then this year what it is jumped up to $486,000. On an accrual basis, you can list interest as an expense, which is what all this is. This is an interest payment. So what was happening on the financials, the council believed in 14 and 15 that they were actually putting about $1.3 million in the bank. But what was happening in the audit, they're coming back and making an adjustment for the principal payment. So basically, the council, when they're approving the budget, they approved it, but when the audit was done in June, they come back and make the adjustment. What we're doing is getting it back to a cash basis, so it looks like, oh my gosh, the expenses have ballooned. What happened is we're actually reflecting the true cash basis. Yeah, I had the same look too, Megan. So I would tell you that, yeah, because I about fell over a little bit when I was reading this. But, so I basically reached out to Stiefel again to say, I got an idea. Let's do some debt restructuring. And so that was not clearly as easy as the other one that we were able to work out, because the debt, if you'll scroll up, no, it's not even in this page, but there our deposit, our what do we call that thing? I lost track of thought. To protect the asset,
Right here.
bond covenant. The bond covenant money is not even ours. The bond covenant belongs to the state revolving loan fund, and what they do is they give it to us. We generate the interest off of it, and we get to get the interest proceeds from that. So it basically makes that money worth about 2%. This is the cheapest money you're going to find. But when that debt reserve that's in there, so if you're reading those financials and you see a debt reserve of about 1.4 million, that is not the city's money. That's the state's money. But it's cheap money to get. But when you look at the AMORT schedule, the AMORT schedule in 2 or 3 years, that payoff, Brandon, is $860K on the last payment, and we can't use that. That's their money. So we're at in 2 years we're gonna have a big old balloon that's due. So it's gonna be a little bit lean on the old water wastewater budget. But, yeah, but we're not recommending a rate increase. I want to look at the rate structures a little bit more. So there is no rate increases in 2018's fiscal year. But until I still want to dig into it. I didn't want to drop it in Andrew's lap. Did he leave already? Or did he fall? He fall onto the floor?
Somebody pick him up.
So there goes Andrew.
But is
Look on it.
there an
I like
issue with
that
kicking
guy.
that down to
Yeah, that number.
2 years, 3 years down the road? That
He
increase.
noted that.
Is it better to
You know,
trickle
I think it's
it?
time.
Yeah, what-
Or is it gonna be, hey, we got nothing, we got nothing?
No. Great question. So what Brandon's asking is it better for us to look at rate increases over a gradual time? Always, that's the way to do it. The challenge of why I wanted the water wastewater budget separate, it's a bad way to fly because the operating cost of wastewater and water are not even remotely the same. So what you can do by blending them together, you can pay the debt service out of utilizing either fund. But so when they're paying their water bill, they're thinking, hey, that's going for water. Well, it could be going to pay off the sewer too. So you can't really create an operating cost per 1,000 gallons or revenue per 1,000 gallons that you need to pay your bills if you don't even know what the actual costs are going to. So we're separating those things out. And I hope to have in the next 3 to 4 months a schedule that will show you that, but what you're going to see in that schedule, Brandon, because the council was not aware of how the interest was being done, they're thinking, man, we're putting $1.3 million in the bank. And what's happening when they would reconcile the accounts in the audit, it would take about that $750,000 number. See, that's a lot of numbers. So like this 2001 series, 710,000, and then the 19. So you got about 1.1 million that was actually being brought back in after you'd already approved the budget for the fiscal.
So do you need more homes to help pay for?
Well, naturally, it's volume based. The more people you got to spread the cost out over. So yeah, that's why we're driving towards. What would be very helpful is to pick up a big water user in the Brookline area. Problem is our water rates are so high that people are recognizing that. They're saying, listen, it's hard to do business. So one of the economic development incentives we got to create is to help create a rate structure that if they'll bring 500 jobs and use 250,000 gallons of water a day, that they're not paying that level, but it's also helping us pay off the debt. So sometimes we're marketing after businesses that'll use large amounts of water. But we've got it. I knew this was the part I wanted to get to in this year's budget, that this was going to be a shock to the council that had looked at budgets before, because you're thinking, man, we're putting 1 million in here, they got 160,000 left over.
Which is accurate.
That's a cash basis. That's like your checkbook and my checkbook. Oh, my checkbook does not have 160K in it, but you get the point on a cash basis.
Might be your checkbook,
Yeah.
not mine.
But this is going to be a work. But the nice thing about this is at 3 years, that number will come back into play, and so that number will actually be about $1.5 million left over. However, the issue is, one thing about it is that you learn when the more you take over public works in a short interim is you realize that we have, like if you took a gallon jug, that 1 gallon gets pumped 3 times through a pump station before it ever is delivered to the wastewater plant. That is the most inefficient, ineffective method, and it costs you $1 million just to do the Schuler Creek lift station. So imagine so somewhere there's going to have to be a corrective action to address that situation. So when that debt expires, one thing we're doing right now is a master sewer plan to address what is the best way to get it more cost effective for our residents, not to be dealing with that issue. I know the voters voted for that. I think it was unintended consequences that they're paying that much water. We are the highest sewer bill, and technically it needs to go up even more. Schuler Creek was not funded through a bunch of cash. It was basically what was over time. Everybody thought it was like 1.3 million a year. It wasn't. And so
now we're just looking at more accurate.
yeah, well, it's going to happen in 3 years. We're going to have to reissue debt to fix the sewer problem. But I do believe, I'm hopeful in that.
It just takes smarter growth.
It does. And what it is you say, okay, what's the right thing? And this is the one thing about it is, this is why we have the word bold and urgent in our value system as a city. We're going to have to make bold steps to correct some stuff. And I'm not there to point the finger at somebody how they did it then, but that's reality. And that reality is affecting everybody every month. And they're like, man, why is my sewer bill so high? That's why the PIO is necessary to say, hey, listen, did you know for every gallon you flush, it's pumped 3 times? So what we're also going to have probably in the next 3 to 4 months is actually data that shows what the operating cost per 1,000 gallons is for Nixa, what it is for Ozark. And you're going to see the exponential difference and what it costs. That's why having those 2 budgets separated rather than just combined is important, because they're like, I don't know why my sewer bill's so high. We got to tell the story why. Because I want to say there's about 10,000 new residents in the Republic that weren't here when that vote was taken that would love to know the answer to that question. So we're just going to explain the why so that whenever we're sitting there trying to reallocate and reissue debt, that we'll have a good answer. But this, I knew this would be a little bit of a shocker for some, because I about fell out of my chair. I was like, oh, I figured out what they did. Because I thought, man, we're getting ready to cash. They're like, no, what happened? I was hopeful. Then I was nervous. But it's all good. And I say that, if you look at this last year, where we was at a year ago, and how we finishing and where we're at, it was pretty bleak. So I say the word favor. Our focus is right, our attention's right, and I believe we'll just continue to see that favor as we move forward. But we gotta be bold and urgent about doing it. My staff's sick of hearing it. So,
What, do you know when the last time, like, that was refinanced, the bigger one?
it was not, and I'll tell you why, is because that is an SRF loan is the cheapest money you'll ever find, because it's 2%. You're not gonna find,
You're gonna find it cheaper.
no, and so when I looked at refinancing,
Well, I just see that it's like 2031.
oh,
Yeah.
well, wrong one. I don't know what you're looking at. Go back to
The
the,
Brookline Utilities.
oh, that's Brookline. But these other ones, this is the,
Yeah, my main concern is the 2031 one. Because I don't know where it is.
oh, see, 2020 is a big, these two, 2020 and 2021
Then you got the one.
are big years. Those are big, so let's see, that is,
2031.
so you got about 1.3 million. And this is about 285K for Brookline, so that's manageable versus the 1.4. You could actually in turn around and pay off that debt with the money you save out of Brookline, or out of these. But like if you look at the fire tax too, back to the level property tax, we can't wait till 2032. That's 14 more years to pay for something that probably should have been a ballot issue, not a general fund issue. So that this will free up cash in the general fund as well, but we got to continue to work. If you look at the number one thing on my board, it's debt strategy. We're down by 2.8 million this year from last year. I think we're going to have to continue to drop that even harder. But crafting that message to the community is going to be very, very critical that we do it right. Because they need to know where we actually stand versus that other number you're looking at says 1.3 million. That's not really what we have. It's more like 160,000.
So just back on Heinz and Oakwood, is that money just sitting in an account somewhere?
Yes.
Huh.
And I'll explain a little bit about the Heinz and Oakwood. It was actually funded through a MoDOT grant, the STP Urban grant. So that's the 20% roughly of the project cost. So overall, it's a little over $2 million for that total cost of the project. The grant is 80%, so we had to come up with 20% matching in order to get the grant.
But we had to use it or lose it, right? So
That's
we
right.
We had to move on it.
Yeah.
Well, we almost
moved
lost
on
it.
But then when we did move on it, it wasn't part of this. It was, oh, hey, you have to take out a loan for it.
That's right. We did not have the matching funds to do it, so we borrowed the money. But that was a couple, I mean, again, that was, I don't remember, that was 2015, I think, it looks like. Continue, sir, sorry.
Any other questions about debt?
Broke your stride.
No.
But I commend Jared for putting this is a document we did not have a year ago, so we actually know where our debt is actually at rather than the AMORT schedule in the audits.
Next page is just dealing with the capital improvement sales tax. I think everyone is aware of, obviously, the tax, and I think you're already aware of where we're gonna spend the money in 18. Just to go over it, the quarter cent generates locally around $620,000. We're actually gonna go into 18 with $50,000 in the bank. The December payment of that will actually be, go towards the capital improvement sales tax other than the stormwater. But to address the most important issues right away, which we said we were gonna do, which we'll continue to update the website regularly, is first thing we're going to attack is the storm sirens. Dwayne and Lynn will have those to you in February for an award. That's for the Island Green area and the area around Miller Park. ADA improvements, those will be for this building. We're going to do a complete lobby remodel to better that whole vestibule thing and coming in and make it ADA compliant. And we have a few issues we've got to tackle over at the Senior Friendship Center, the Jerry Poole Senior Friendship Center. I forgot to say that. Fleet vehicles, this is one thing we did to relieve money out of the general fund. We're able to take 3 new police vehicles every year. These particular vehicles will all be police vehicles, but they could essentially be Garrett's vehicles as well. But 3 new police vehicles in 2018 will be purchased out of this fund. New animal shelter, which this process has already started rolling, which we're tremendously excited about. Megan is serving on the committee. Thank you, Megan. But we've got the right person leading that charge in Christina Elmore as well. She is so excited and so, I mean, she is all over this, and I understand our focus group is really good too. So that's exciting stuff. I do want to put this out here right now because I strongly believe $250,000 is not going to be enough. So I just want to go ahead and get that disclaimer out. But that is $250,000 potentially in 18 funds that might have to roll over to 19. But if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. And I'm not so sure the $250,000 is going to get there. So, and the last one is gateway signs, wayfinding signs. And David, did you put the street signs in the street budget? Or
Yes, it is. There is in the street budget. There's $75,000 to change the street signs, all the street signs in town to the more 6-inch lettering. And then around the schools, they're going to have the orange with the Tiger logo in it. So try to make a more branding approach to the community.
Just a little bit.
More striping.
Mayor, just ask about Main Street. We are going to try to address a few issues. One of them being the street lighting, and then possibly, I don't know if we're going to be able to mill that quick or not, but we're going to get to that.
The milling will not occur next.
Okay.
Not in 18. 19 is probably more likely to do. Because the issue is with the milling, that street's got such a large crown to it. It's going to take a ton to get all that out. There's going to be more work that's involved because they put more asphalt on top of that street and not removed it. So
Okay.
it's going to take a little more engineering, and I'm glad Andrew's back here because he gets to work on it. Welcome, Andrew.
But there's a number of things up here that are wow projects. I think that'll make a huge difference in our community. So thankful that this sales tax passed. So.
Jared, with the storm sirens, is that going to put us on with Greene County, where Greene County, like when the tornado sirens go off, is that going to be from Greene County? And
Yeah, I need to defer that to. Did you hear that question, Dwayne?
No, I couldn't.
Well, so wait a minute. The question is that
is it?
does Greene County run our sirens?
Absolutely not.
Do they run everybody else's?
We have a better siren than what they have, and a different system than what they have. It's actually a step up of what they have. And so, no, we set them off in-house.
Okay.
Are we the only one?
Are we the?
It's kind of a hodgepodge around. They can, I think they fire Willard sirens. Some of the other towns, I'm really not for sure. I don't think they do Fair Grove. They may do Stratford. Mr. Smith may know that. I'm not really for sure.
They do everything except Republic.
Yeah.
It's on, if you go to OEM, and I would encourage the rest of council to go to Greene County OEM and get a tour, because there's a big map up there. The only one that they do not control is Republic. So
With the improved weather warnings, you know how they just have the polygons for specific areas, regional areas of the county. Do they even have the access? They don't just set them all off in Greene County. They're regionalized, I'm assuming.
yeah, they've got they have a map up there, and each one of those is coded. So they'll go in and activate the coded whatever weather national weather tells them to do. Because we talked to them specifically about storm shelters. Me and my guys did, or not storm shelters, storm sirens, because we were curious about Stratford's. And Republic is independent.
So who's in charge of that? Who does that?
Les does that. He's in direct communication with the Weather Service. They actually will tell us over the radio when to trip the sirens. We will usually trip ours before Springfield trips theirs, because where we're at on the western end of the county. And then ours are electrical battery backup. The counties are just strictly electric. So if the power goes off, they can't trip that siren where we can. We can continue to fire. So it's really, we have, like I said, we have a little bit better operating system than what they have countywide.
Okay.
We can look into connecting us to the county if that's the direction you would like for us to look.
Well, I'm curious about it, and then, so we have to change our sirens and everything, so then they would only be electric?
We don't want to go backwards. We would prefer.
No, exactly, but if Greene County was to be in charge of that, we would have to go backwards?
It's
I would think
mostly done through software and radio communications.
Okay.
Because we still use an old school two-way radio, just like they do, to send what's called a tone to the siren, which turns it on and off. tell them what to do. Now, something we have that they don't have is the sirens, the Miller Road siren and the ones through the core of the city are voice over. So we can get on that siren and actually give a instructional message to the public. They don't have that capability.
If they were to set them off or whatever, would you still have the capability to go on to those, like at Miller and here, to put your voice on it or whatever you need to do for that?
I really
So you wanted to explore this?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I agree with you. I'd like to explore that. So
It's, the way it's set up now, I can turn my Surface computer on back there, and once I'm into the city's VPN, I can hit a button and turn them on in about a minute. So that's one way we have to do it. We can set them off by radio with a couple of fire trucks or command vehicles as well, and then into emergency management downstairs. We'll be happy to look into it.
Will there be any concerns about not being close enough to the action, meaning what Springfield's looking at versus what Republic's looking at, and the timing of when to set those off? There be any potential issues there? Let's say Springfield does control it.
To my knowledge,
Irving
to
County.
set theirs off, they have to drive to the EOC in Springfield, to their command center, downtown at 330 West Scott. Or we can set ours off from basically here, home, wherever.
Have you all had any issues?
I have no idea. I mean, they're
Granted, you're on
Dude.
the east side, not the west side.
right. I mean, that's what they're in business to do. Is that stuff on a very grand scale, and they don't. I don't know. Seems like that might be something we should explore, but if they're capable of doing it and doing it well, then maybe that's something that we need to explore. And I don't like setting off our own storm sirens, for the simple fact of what if it's too late, or what if that storm's already approached halfway through the city. Now, have we taken out whoever can activate it? Where they're in a tornado-proof building down there, and they hit the go button, and unless that siren's missing, it's going to go.
I think we've obviously got some, something to talk about and something we need to research and look into, and
Okay.
so.
Thank you
I
very
do have
much.
one more question about those storm sirens. I know we've had, in the past, the maps that show the city coverage. Does this get us back in line with where we need to be?
No, we've still got some holes here and there. I think we had a total of 5 spread out over the tax line.
Okay.
We've got a fairly sizable hole up and around Republic Ford, in that area there. You know, there's a lot of debate about the sirens, and we've kind of tried to get where we have most of our people that are outdoors, parks, schools, stuff like that. Everybody nowadays has a cell phone. You know, a few years ago, Nixa took all their storm sirens out because they got tired of messing with them. They were constantly breaking down. They didn't have money to pay for them, and they just strictly tell the citizens you need to rely on an app on your phone or have the weather on the radio or something like that. City of Branson, they still have some sirens because they have a lot of people outdoors, but they also have a callback system where they can call their house number or their cell phone and do mass calls, you know, that says tornado warning.
Doesn't Civic Ready already provide a phone call to residents if they were?
Yeah, it provides a phone call and text.
So, I mean, I think we've already
Sign up.
spent quite a bit of money that's just not been utilized completely, because I know they're having a meeting tomorrow, but Civic Ready is something that's been around, at least at the city, for a couple of years, that I do not believe is fully utilized. I think they're working on better utilization of
Got
it.
people signed up on it, that are using it, but it's just, we need the PIO to help
Yeah.
push that in.
We agree. I agree. We'll work on the,
Just do some research.
Thank you.
The next slide is dealing with the tax rate structure. The changes since you last saw this last year, or some that are new. We're currently at the exact same tax rate we were last year at this time, 7.85%. The capital improvements, sales tax that was for stormwater went over to general capital improvements. And then with the passage of the county sales tax on Tuesday, Our local rate will be going up to 8.35. I think it'll be in January or February. So I just want to make sure you saw that. But this is what we have in place and what we have available. Right here was the 8 that David alluded to earlier for fire protection if we would want to go down that route. Total that all up though, and we're currently at 7.85% in the city. Soon to go to 8.35. Lisa.
Just to go over real quickly what our benefits will be for 2018. With our new broker, I told him at that council meeting, I said we're going to expect great things from you for 2018, and I think they did come through for us. So with our health insurance, we're going to continue with United Healthcare. Our employees will have basically no change. They'll have access to both networks, which is Cox and Mercy. No change for our employees, but we will have a 1% decrease, which is approximately, as David mentioned, $7,000 in savings. The performance awards, this was something that we started in January of 2017 with United Healthcare. Our estimated rebate is $29,729. That's based on quarters 1 through 3. So fourth quarter is not quite in yet, but that is their best estimate, and that is because of claims utilization.
Lisa, what is our $7,000 savings? What is that? What are you hearing in the market with our neighboring cities? Are they in the same boat? Are we?
They are not. I haven't heard of a decrease, actually.
3 to 5% increases.
So we're having. Gotcha.
I actually had 2 cities contact me saying, "Who is your broker?" because of our decrease.
Ours at the fire district went up 22%.
22%. Yeah. I'm not seeing any kind of decrease, especially with having the network access to both. So.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Our dental benefits, we are changing providers on dental to Sun Life. It's the same benefit structure. So the employees will have the same benefit. However, the providers are going to increase from 120 to 178. So that is really good news for our employees, and then we are getting a 7% decrease in those premiums. So the savings will be $5,764. Dearborn, our disability and life insurance, so long-term disability, short-term disability, voluntary life, there will be no changes. Those rates are holding the same, so we're going to stick with Dearborn. Teladoc, as David mentioned, this is actually going to be absorbed through UHC. It's something that they already provide, so it's the same service, and employees will pay a copay to access the service. So they will contact Teladoc just like they normally do, and then they'll pay a copay for that service. And David already went over this. It was actually, we are now going to be in compliance with IRS, and that will save us over $5,000. Flexible spending account, we will have one. It's actually going to be provided by American Fidelity. They are not going to be charging us for the card. We'll still get a credit card at the beginning of the year for employees that choose either a flexible spending account or limited flexible spending account if they're on the HSA plan. So they'll still get their credit card. It's the same benefit because it's an IRS regulated benefit, so to speak. But they are not going to charge us for the card usage that we're currently being charged with TASK. That's why we switched providers. So that will be a savings of over $3,000. One thing I do want to mention that's not on the slides, and I will take responsibility for that, it's a benefit that the city does not pay for, but it's a benefit that employees can choose, and that's the vision. We are changing vision providers. It'll be the same, basically the same, I think it's like a $5 difference on some services, but it's basically the same coverage for vision. We're going to Superior Vision, and those premiums are decreased by 20%.
Wow.
So, all around, great news. Any questions?
It's awesome.
No, that's really
So
good.
I think the one emphasis, and we talked about this today, is if you look at the handbook revisions and the things that we're doing to provide additional holidays, we're trying to stay very competitive with our insurance and different things of that nature. And the adjustments that we're making, we are making our #1 investment into our employees. And I think that's the emphasis that we want to spread, and then in this budget, you'll see it in this budget. There is still some projects we're gonna get done, and if you wanna go over the line items, we need to take a quick break. If there's any questions on what you've seen that we can answer, or any numbers that, you see, yes, sir.
The new debt, it says fire truck, 250,000 for 2018.
Yeah, Dwayne can speak to that. I asked him the same questions today. Dwayne, could you take that one, please?
The next truck we have to replace is a 1991 rescue truck that we're currently running now, and it is in extremely poor condition. Top priority tomorrow is to find somebody to weld the aluminum and put the door back on it that fell off. So, we had spotted a used truck on the secondary market at about $250,000, and it sold in 2 days. We weren't even in position where we could get there, so we've kind of backed that up. We are now looking at the possibility of just buying a new one. We think we can do that for maybe $300,000 range versus buying one that's several years old and somebody else's problem. If this comes to fruition, it's going to be late in the year. If we go down the road of a new one, we're looking at probably 8 to 9 months to build a truck, and we're not even starting with a inspect. So we were in hopes of trying to go to the secondary market and find something that was used, that was quality, that would get us by. Is that
The bottom line,
Yeah, because I'd like to see us look at options other than buying a used truck, or, you know, we also probably need to look at responses, see if it's worth running a $250,000 fire truck to all the med calls and that kind of stuff. I mean, we're putting a lot of wear and tear on a big truck. So I think there's other things to look at included in that other than just spending the money.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'll take like a 5 or 10 minute break and then talk, or go over any financials, or you just want to go straight to the financials?
I prefer to take about a 5-minute break. Is that all right, Reed?
Jerry hasn't had his cake yet.
Oh, that's it. Is that yours? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Jared's.
It hasn't peaked up yet.
So, doesn't mean